Today we're going to talk about buses, drum buses and acoustic buses and bass buses and vocal buses and mixed buses and all of the buses. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm Cole Caparoon. Thank you for stopping by for another video. Now, a little disclaimer before we get into this short and sweet video that there is no right and wrong in mixing because we are making art. So regardless of what I say here today, I want you to experiment for yourself and know why you do what you do. Don't just do it because me or someone else on the internet told you it was a good idea. Now let's start off with what are buses for those of you that don't know. A bus is when you take, let's say, a drum kit and you send all of the drum kit, the kick and the snare and the toms and the overheads, etc., all to a new aux track. And you set the input of that aux track to a bus and you set all of the outputs of all of those drums to the same bus. Now all of your drums are being fed through this one fader, this one aux. And that now is your drum bus. Now I get songs to mix on a weekly basis, and sometimes some of those songs have absolutely insane routing in them. We're talking kick buses and snare buses, tom buses and drum buses, and then a bass bus, even though a bass is only one single track, and a piano bus and an acoustic bus and a vocal bus, even though the lead vocal is only one track. An all music bus where all of that stuff then goes to a music bus, and then that music bus goes to the mix bus. And like, I've seen some crazy things. And so I thought what would be interesting to do in this video is to just explain to you what I do and how to think about buses, and then you experiment for yourself and decide how you want to handle it. So here's how I look at buses. First and foremost, the only reason I ever use a bus is if I want to process a group of tracks with a single processor. And what that means is usually it's compression. So for instance, I always have a drum bus in my productions if it's got a real drum kit in it. And I'll send the kick drum and the snare drum and all the toms and usually the overheads to an aux. And that is my drum bus, and then I'll put a compressor on that drum bus so it compresses all of the drums together as one instrument. Now once I've done that, I will take that drum bus and I will duplicate that, so that way I have two auxes with the same input, so that way all of those drums are feeding two auxes exactly the same. I put compression on one of them and nothing on the other. This is parallel compression on my drum bus now. Now I personally will never use a bus to just control volume. I will never put all of my vocals on a bus, so just for the simple fact that I have one fader to turn my vocals up and down, because I would just group the tracks together to do that. When you group tracks, they all move as one. And then that saves you the time and headache of setting up complicated routing for new buses for absolutely everything. Now I personally never use an all music bus. This is one that I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of people take an all music bus, so they've got all their drum buses and their bass buses and their acoustic buses and their guitar buses, and then they feed those to an all music bus, and then they take their vocal and their vocal bus and send the vocal bus and the all music bus to the mix bus, and I can't for the life of me figure out why someone would do this. I guess so that way your lead vocal doesn't clamp down on your all music bus compression, but if you're mixing your stuff right, it shouldn't be a problem anyway. So philosophically, the only time I ever use buses is if I'm trying to process, usually compression, a group of tracks together as one. Another example of this would be ganged vocals or a fake choir, for instance. Let's say I've got 20 tracks of someone singing or yelling or shouting or whatever that is supposed to simulate a group of people in a room performing together. It's very often that I will send that group of tracks to a bus so that way I can EQ and compress those as a group. This gives more of an illusion that it was recorded in a space together with a bunch of different people rather than just a ton of different tracks. Now there is definitely a sonic difference between taking 20 vocals and EQing and compressing them individually versus sending them all to a single bus and EQing and compressing that bus. And you should experiment with the difference here. It really goes from like sounding like 20 individual vocals in a stack to being much more, this was recorded in a room all together. And so that's really what I would like to get across in this short video is you should experiment with buses, and you should know exactly why you would use a bus in certain situations and why you would not use a bus in other situations. For me personally, it's not about volume ever. I would never do that just for volume. For me personally, it's about processing a group of tracks with a single processor like a compressor. And that is the only reason that I ever use buses. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't use buses for any other reason, but you should know why. You should know why it's faster, why it's better, why it's easier, why it gives you better results. You should be able to explain this to people in a single sentence. And if you cannot articulate why what you do is the best choice for your goals in a single sentence, then you need to do more experimentation. There are links down below for every single piece of musical gear that I use. Those links go to Sweetwater. So anytime you guys need any piece of musical gear whatsoever, you can jump on any one of my videos, click on any of the links in the description of any video. And once you're on the site, you can purchase anything you need. And when you do that, it costs you nothing extra, but goes a long ways to help support this channel. So thank you guys for supporting the people who support me and using those links when you need to purchase something. Thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video. Drop me a comment. Let me know your thoughts. How do you use buses? What is your preferred method? But not only what is your preferred method, why? Why do you do it? And are you 100% sure that it is the best way to do it for your intended results? Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope it helped you, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.